He was known as a man no one could touch, not by law, not by money, not by power. People called him a billionaire, but that word felt too small for what he truly was. He owned companies across countries, controlled markets, and influenced decisions that affected millions of lives. His name appeared on business magazines, news channels, and ranking lists every year. To the world, he was successful, fearless, and unstoppable. But behind the glass walls of his luxury penthouse, he lived a very different life. The billionaire trusted numbers more than people. He believed everything had a price, and every problem could be solved with money. From a young age, he had learned that kindness was a weakness and emotions were a distraction. His rise to power had not been easy. He had stepped on many people, ignored many cries, and walked past suffering without looking back. Over time, this made him strong in business, but empty inside. Friends disappeared, family drifted away, and love became something he read about, not something he felt. Every morning, he followed the same routine. A private doctor checked his vitals, a chef prepared his meals, and assistants planned his entire day. He rarely stepped outside without security. The world felt dangerous to him, even though he was the one holding all the power. He trusted machines, contracts, and systems, but never people. To him, humans were unreliable. One evening, during an important meeting with investors, something strange happened. His chest tightened, his vision blurred, and the room began to spin. At first, he ignored it, thinking it was just stress. He had ignored pain his whole life. But this time was different. His breathing became heavy, and he collapsed in front of everyone. Panic filled the room. The same people who feared him seconds ago now stood frozen, not knowing what to do. He was rushed to a private luxury hospital reserved only for the elite. This hospital was known for miracles, advanced machines, and doctors trained in the best institutions in the world. If anyone could save him, it was them. The news spread fast. Media vans gathered outside. Headlines flashed everywhere. The untouchable billionaire was fighting for his life. Doctors ran test after test. They used advanced scanners, rare medicines, and experimental procedures. But the results were confusing. His condition did not fit any clear diagnosis. His organs were slowly failing, yet no clear cause could be found. Every hour that passed made his situation worse. The same man who controlled thousands of lives now lay helpless on a hospital bed, unable to even open his eyes. Inside that silent room, machines beeped steadily. Tubes surrounded his body. The billionaire, once loud and commanding, was now quiet and fragile. For the first time in his life, money could not speak for him. His assistants made calls, offering donations, rewards, anything. Doctors listened, but remained silent. They had reached a point where even they were afraid. As the night grew longer, memories from the billionaire's past began to surface in his mind, though he was unconscious. Faces he had forgotten, workers he had ignored, and decisions he had made without care. Somewhere deep inside, regret tried to rise, but his body was too weak to react. It was as if life itself was asking him to pause and look back. Outside the hospital, people gathered. Some prayed for him, hoping for a miracle. Others felt nothing. To many poor people, he was just a name connected to factories, layoffs, and harsh decisions. Few knew him as a human being. He had built walls so high that even sympathy could not climb them. Doctors held meetings behind closed doors. They spoke in low voices, choosing words carefully. They agreed on one painful truth. They were losing him. No amount of training had prepared them for this moment. The idea that such a powerful man could die without explanation scared them. It reminded them that life was not something they truly controlled. Meanwhile, his family members arrived, people he had not spoken to in years. They stood by his bed, unsure of what to feel. Love had faded long ago, replaced by distance and silence. Still, seeing him like this shook them. For a moment, titles and wealth meant nothing. He was just a man lying between life and death. As hours turned into days, hope began to fade. The billionaire remained unconscious. Machines kept him alive, but his condition showed no improvement. Doctors prepared the family for the worst. The hospital, once confident and calm, now felt heavy with fear. No one could imagine that outside this world of wealth, power, and advanced science, something unexpected was slowly moving closer. Something that did not belong to money, status, or medicine. Something simple, overlooked, and invisible to people like the billionaire. And while the doctors struggled inside, the story of the untouchable billionaire was quietly moving toward a turn no one could predict, a turn that would challenge everything he believed about life, power, and humanity. The next morning arrived quietly, but inside the luxury hospital, tension was growing with every passing minute. The billionaire remained unconscious, surrounded by machines that breathed, pumped, and beeped for him. Doctors stood near the glass walls, studying screens filled with numbers that refused to improve. His condition had become the center of the hospital's focus. Every corridor whispered his name, and every doctor felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on their shoulders. More specialists were called in. Some arrived from other cities, others from different countries. They were experts in rare diseases, heart failures, neurological disorders, and experimental treatments. Each one believed they might be the one to solve the mystery. Meetings were held day and night. Medical reports piled up. Charts were reviewed again and again. But no matter how much knowledge they shared, the truth remained the same. Nothing was working. The billionaire's body was slowly giving up. His heart weakened at unpredictable moments. His lungs struggled to keep up. His brain activity dropped and rose without reason. It was as if his body was fighting a battle that medicine could not understand. Doctors tried changing medicines, adjusting machines, and even suggesting risky procedures. Some treatments showed brief improvement, but the relief never lasted. Behind closed doors, the doctor's confidence began to crack. They had saved politicians, celebrities, and powerful figures before. They were used to winning. Failure was something they rarely faced. But now, standing before a man who could buy anything in the world, they felt powerless. One senior doctor finally said what others were afraid to admit. They were reaching the limits of science. The billionaire's assistants did not accept this easily. They reminded the doctors who their patient was. They spoke of donations, hospital expansions, and international recognition. They hinted at rewards and consequences. But the doctors remained silent. They knew this was no longer about influence. This was about life, and life was slipping away. Outside the hospital room, the billionaire's family waited. His relatives watched the doctors' faces carefully, searching for hope in their expressions. But hope was becoming harder to find. Old family conflicts resurfaced in hushed conversations. Some blamed stress. Some blamed his lifestyle. Others blamed fate. No one truly knew what to say. As days passed, the billionaire's condition became a global topic. News channels discussed his health every hour. Business markets reacted nervously. Employees across his companies waited anxiously, unsure of what would happen next. The man who once controlled everything had now become the center of uncertainty. Inside the hospital, the atmosphere changed. Nurses walked more quietly. Doctors avoided eye contact with the family. Even the machines sounded louder in the silence. Every alarm caused hearts to race. Every stable moment felt like borrowed time. One evening, a young doctor stayed late, reviewing the billionaire's records alone. She noticed patterns that did not fit normal medical logic. Symptoms appeared and disappeared without reason. Treatments failed in ways she had never seen. It felt as if something beyond medicine was at play. She shook the thought away, reminding herself to stay scientific. Still, doubt lingered. Another doctor suggested an experimental procedure that had never been tried on a patient this week. It could either save him or end everything instantly. The debate was intense. Some believed it was the only option left. Others felt it was too dangerous. The family was torn. They had trusted doctors their whole lives, but now those same doctors were unsure. When the procedure was finally attempted, the entire hospital held its breath. Machines hummed louder. Nurses watched closely. For a brief moment, it seemed to work. The billionaire's vitals stabilized. A small wave of hope spread through the room. But within hours, his condition worsened again. The improvement faded like a dream. That night, the lead doctor sat alone in his office, staring at the floor. He had dedicated his life to saving others. He had trained for decades. Yet here he was defeated. He realized something painful. Medicine was powerful, but it was not absolute. There were forces it could not control. The billionaire, still unconscious, lay unaware of the storm around him. But deep inside, his body continued to fight. Memories flickered faintly in his mind. Moments of success, moments of cruelty, moments of silence. Though he could not move, it was as if his soul was restless. By the fifth day, doctors reached a breaking point. They gathered the family and spoke honestly. They explained that they had done everything possible. No treatment had worked. They could keep him alive with machines, but recovery seemed unlikely. The words hung heavy in the air. Some family members cried. Others stared in disbelief. The hospital that once symbolized miracles now felt like a place of waiting. Waiting for a miracle that science could not deliver. Waiting for an answer no one had. Outside, life continued as normal. Cars passed. People laughed. Children played. But inside that hospital room, time felt frozen. The billionaire's power, wealth, and influence meant nothing against the quiet strength of fate. No one noticed the small figure outside the hospital gates. A poor black boy watched from a distance, unaware that his life was about to cross paths with a man the world believed was untouchable. While doctors struggled inside and hope faded with every hour, something unexpected was slowly drawing closer, something that would challenge everything they believed about healing, power, and what it truly means to save a life. The boy lived in a world that most people never noticed. While the hospital shined with glass walls, security guards, and expensive cars, his world existed just outside those gates. He was a poor black boy, no older than 12, with worn clothes, dusty shoes, and eyes that had seen too much too early. He slept wherever he could find space, sometimes under a shop shade, sometimes near the bus stop, and sometimes behind the hospital itself, where the guards rarely looked. Every morning, he woke up before sunrise. Hunger was his alarm clock. He searched for small jobs, carrying bags, cleaning car windows, or helping street vendors in exchange for leftover food. He had no parents with him. Some said they were gone. Others said they never cared. The truth was buried deep inside him, locked away with pain he rarely spoke about. The hospital was his favorite place to sit near. Not because he liked hospitals, but because people there dropped coins without looking, too busy with their own lives. He watched expensive cars arrive, saw well-dressed people rush inside, and listened to sirens that screamed urgency. To him, the hospital felt like a border between two worlds, one full of wealth and one full of struggle. That was where he first heard the name of the billionaire. People talked about him everywhere. Nurses whispered near the entrance. Guards discussed him during long shifts. Visitors spoke about him with fear and respect. The boy did not know much about billionaires, but he understood one thing clearly. This man was important, more important than anyone else inside that building. As days passed, the boy noticed something strange. Ambulances stopped coming for the billionaire. Doctors no longer rushed with confidence. Faces looked tired. Voices sounded low. Something was wrong. The boy felt it, even without understanding medicine. He had learned to read people early in life. Survival had taught him that skill. One afternoon, while sitting near the hospital wall, he overheard two nurses talking. They spoke softly, but their words reached him clearly. They said the doctors could not save the billionaire. They said nothing was working. The boy froze. He did not know why, but his chest felt heavy. A strange sadness filled him, sadness for a man he had never met. That night, the boy could not sleep. Memories came rushing back, memories he had tried to forget. A small house, a woman crying, a man leaving, a promise never kept. His heart beat fast. He sat up and stared at the hospital lights glowing in the distance. Something inside him stirred, something he did not fully understand. He remembered his mother's words from long ago. She had once told him that helping someone was never wasted, even if the world did not see it. At the time, He had laughed, too young to understand. Now those words returned, stronger than ever. The next day, he went closer to the hospital entrance than usual. Guards noticed him and shouted for him to move away. He stepped back, but his eyes stayed fixed on the building. He felt a pull, like something inside was calling him. He did not know why, but he believed he needed to be there. As hours passed, the boy noticed a doctor sitting alone on the steps, head lowered, hands shaking slightly. This surprised him. Doctors were supposed to be strong. Seeing one look broken made the situation feel more real. The boy wanted to speak, but hesitated. He had learned long ago that poor boys were not welcome in conversations with important people. Still, his feet moved on their own. He walked closer and stopped a few steps away. The doctor looked up, surprised. For a moment, they stared at each other. The boy saw tired eyes filled with worry. The doctor saw a child with nothing, yet strangely calm. "Go home," the doctor said softly, without anger. "I don't have one," the boy replied. The doctor looked away, unsure what to say. Silence followed. Then the boy spoke again. "The man inside," he said, pointing toward the hospital, "he is dying." The doctor's face tightened. "Yes," he replied quietly. "I think I can help," the boy said. The words sounded impossible. The doctor almost laughed, but something stopped him. The boy's voice did not shake. There was no fear in it, only certainty. Still, the doctor shook his head. "This is not a place for children," he said, "and not for miracles." The boy nodded slowly and stepped back. He did not argue, but inside his belief did not fade. He knew people would not listen easily. They never had. Being poor had taught him patience. That night, he prayed in his own way. He did not know fancy words. He simply asked for a chance to do what he felt was right, a chance to be seen just once. The next morning, something unexpected happened. The billionaire's condition worsened suddenly. Alarms rang. Doctors rushed. Nurses ran. Panic returned stronger than before. The family cried openly now. Hope was slipping away fast. The boy watched from outside as chaos filled the hospital. His heart pounded. This was it. If he did nothing now, he might regret it forever. Ignoring fear, he walked straight toward the main entrance. Security stopped him immediately. They laughed when he spoke. They told him to leave. People stared. Some mocked him. Others ignored him. But the boy stood his ground. He repeated his request calmly. He wanted to see the billionaire. A crowd gathered. The scene felt strange. A dying billionaire inside. A poor boy outside refusing to leave. Finally, a nurse recognized him. She remembered the conversation from steps. She hesitated, then went inside to inform a doctor. Minutes felt like hours. The boy waited, heart racing, hands shaking slightly now. For the first time, doubt crept in. What if he was wrong? What if he was just a foolish child chasing a feeling? Then the doors opened. A doctor stepped out and looked at him carefully. Desperation had erased logic. When science fails, people become willing to listen to the impossible. "Come," the doctor said quietly. The boy stepped inside the hospital for the first time. Bright lights, cold floors, and silent stares surrounded him. He walked forward, unaware that his presence marked the beginning of something no one inside that building was prepared for. The forgotten boy had crossed the line between worlds. And in doing so, the story of the untouchable billionaire was about to change forever. The boy's footsteps echoed softly against the cold hospital floor as he followed the doctor down a long white corridor. Everything felt strange and unreal to him. The lights were too bright, the air smelled sharp and clean, and people stared as if he did not belong there. He kept his head down, holding his hands together to stop them from shaking. This was the first time he had ever been inside a place like this, a place built for people with money and power. Doctors and nurses whispered as he passed. Some looked confused, others annoyed. A few shook their heads in disbelief. No one understood why a poor boy was being allowed inside when the world's best doctors were failing. The boy could feel their doubt, but he kept walking. Something inside him felt strong, stronger than fear. They stopped outside a large glass door. Inside, machines surrounded a man lying still on a bed. Tubes ran from his body, and screens showed numbers that rose and fell slowly. The billionaire looked smaller than the boy had imagined. He was pale, thin, and silent. The power he once carried was gone. He looked like any other weak man fighting for life. The doctor turned to the boy. "You have only a few minutes," he said quietly. "Tell me why you are here." The boy swallowed. His throat felt dry. "I don't know how to explain," he said honestly. "I just feel I must see him. I feel like I can help." The doctor sighed. He had heard many strange things over the past few days. Desperate families, wild ideas, false hope. Yet something about this boy felt different. There was no fear in his eyes, no greed, no desire for attention. Only calm belief. Another doctor joined them, clearly angry. "This is madness," he said. "We are losing him, and you bring a child?" "There is nothing left to lose," the first doctor replied. 5 minutes. The angry doctor walked away, shaking his head. The door opened slowly, and the boy stepped into the room. The sound of machines filled the air. The boy walked closer to the bed, his eyes fixed on the man lying there. He felt a strange sadness. This man had everything, yet now he had nothing. The boy remembered stories his mother used to tell him when he was very young. She spoke about kindness, about helping others without expecting anything back. She said that sometimes people needed more than medicine. At the time, the boy did not understand. Now, standing in this room, those words felt alive. He reached the side of the bed and stood still. Doctors watched closely, ready to stop him if needed. The boy did not touch anything at first. He simply looked at the billionaire's face. For a moment, he imagined what this man's life must have been like. Power, wealth, decisions that affected thousands. But also loneliness, silence, and distance. Slowly, the boy spoke. His voice was soft but clear. "You don't know me," he said. "And I don't know you. But I think you are tired. I think you are fighting something you don't understand." The machines continued their steady sounds. Nothing changed. The boy took a deep breath and did something no one expected. He gently took the billionaire's hand. Doctors moved forward, but the lead doctor raised his hand, stopping them. The boy's touch was careful, respectful. His hands were small and rough, shaped by hardship. "I forgive you," the boy whispered. The words confused everyone in the room. Forgive him for what? The boy did not explain. He closed his eyes and continued speaking, not to the doctors, not to the machines, but to the man lying before him. "My mother said forgiveness can heal places medicine cannot," he said. "She said carrying pain hurts the body. I don't know if it's true, but I believe it." Tears filled the boy's eyes. He spoke of hunger, of nights spent alone, of people who never looked at him. He spoke of anger he once carried and how it made him sick inside. He spoke of letting it go. Every word came from deep within his heart. Something strange began to happen. One of the monitors beeped differently. A nurse looked closer. "Doctor," she said quietly, "his heart rate is changing." The room grew silent. Everyone stared at the screens. The numbers were slowly stabilizing. Not dramatically, not like in movies, but enough to be noticed. The billionaire's breathing became slightly more regular. Doctors exchanged looks. No one spoke. The boy felt a warmth in his chest. He squeezed the man's hand gently and continued speaking. "You don't have to be strong anymore," he said. "You can rest." A tear rolled down the billionaire's cheek. The boy froze. "He's crying," someone whispered. Doctors rushed closer. This was impossible. The billionaire had been unresponsive for days. Emotional response was something they had not seen. The lead doctor checked the machines again and again, unable to believe what he was seeing. The boy slowly released the man's hand and stepped back. His legs felt weak now. The moment was overwhelming. He had not expected anything to happen. He had only done what felt right. "I think that's enough," the lead doctor said softly. The boy nodded and turned to leave. As he walked toward the door, he looked back one last time. The billionaire lay still, but his face looked calmer, as if a heavy weight had been lifted. Outside the room, doctors surrounded the boy with questions. "What did you do?" one asked. "How did you know to say those things?" The boy shook his head. "I didn't know," he said. "I just listened to my heart." Security arrived, ready to take him out, but the lead doctor stopped them. "Let him go," he said. "He has done more than anyone else today." The boy was escorted back outside the hospital. As the doors closed behind him, he felt exhausted, confused, and unsure. He did not know if the man would live. He did not know if what he did truly mattered. Inside the hospital room, doctors worked quickly, adjusting machines and monitoring every change. The billionaire's condition was still serious, but something had shifted. For the first time in days, there was a small spark of hope. No one could explain it. No one could measure it. But everyone in that room felt it. The unthinkable had already begun. The hospital room felt different after the boy left. The air was still heavy, but something invisible had shifted. Doctors stood quietly around the bed, watching the monitors as if they might suddenly lie. The billionaire remained unconscious, but his face no longer looked tense. The tight lines around his mouth had softened, and his breathing, though still assisted by machines, was more steady than before. The lead doctor broke the silence. "Focus," he said firmly. "Check everything again." Nurses moved quickly. Machines were adjusted. Blood pressure was checked twice. Heart rhythm was monitored closely. No one wanted to speak too soon, but no one could ignore what they were seeing. The numbers were not perfect, but they were better. Much better than they had been in days. One doctor whispered, "This makes no sense." Another replied quietly, "Nothing has made sense since he arrived." They reviewed the timeline again. The sudden change had started right after the boy's visit. Not after new drug. Not after a procedure. Afterwards. After touch. After something no medical book could explain. The billionaire's family was called in. They entered the room with tired faces and red eyes, prepared for bad news. Instead, they were met with cautious hope. The doctors explained that there had been a small but important improvement. No promises. No guarantees. Just a change. His sister stepped closer to the bed and held his hand. "You're still fighting," she whispered. "Please don't stop now." Hours passed. Then something happened that made everyone freeze. The billionaire's fingers moved. At first, the nurse thought she imagined it. She leaned closer. Then it happened again. A small, weak movement, but real. "Doctor," she said loudly. He moved. The room filled with controlled chaos. Doctors rushed in. Tests were ordered immediately. Brain activity was checked. Responses were monitored. Slowly, the billionaire's eyes fluttered beneath closed lids. "He's responding," the lead doctor said, disbelief clear in his voice. For the first time since his collapse, the billionaire was coming back. That night, he drifted in and out of shallow consciousness. He did not fully wake, but he reacted to voices. When his sister spoke, his heart rate changed. When a doctor called his name, his brow tightened slightly. It was as if he was standing between two worlds, unsure which one to choose. Inside his mind, something strange was happening. He saw memories, not in order, not clearly, but with strong emotion. Boardrooms filled with fear. Workers standing silently as he made harsh decisions. A young woman crying as he walked away from her. A small child looking up at him from a distance he had never noticed before. Then he heard a voice. Soft, calm, forgiving. "I forgive you." The words echoed again and again. He did not know where they came from, but they felt heavy and warm at the same time. For the first time in his life, he felt something crack inside him. A wall he had built long ago began to break. Tears formed under his closed eyes. Back in the real world, monitors showed a change. His heart rhythm stabilized further. Oxygen levels improved. Doctors looked at each other, stunned. Emotional response was strengthening his physical condition. It was rare, but not impossible. Still, the timing felt unreal. The lead doctor stepped out and made a call. "Find the boy," he said. The one from earlier. Outside the hospital, the boy sat near the wall, unsure of what to do next. He felt drained, like all his strength had been poured out in that room. He expected to be chased away or forgotten. Instead, a nurse approached him carefully. "Come with me," she said. The boy's heart jumped. "Is he?" he asked, unable to finish the sentence. "He's alive," she replied. "And improving." The boy closed his eyes and let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Inside, the billionaire's condition continued to improve slowly through the night. Doctors remained cautious. They knew recovery would be long and uncertain. But now, there was a path forward. By morning, the billionaire opened his eyes for the first time. The room was quiet. Light filtered in through the window. Machines hummed softly. He felt weak, heavy, and confused. His throat hurt. His body felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. He tried to speak, but no sound came out. A nurse noticed his eyes. "Doctor," she called. "He's awake." Doctors rushed in, calm but alert. They asked simple questions. "Blink if you can hear me. Squeeze my hand." He followed slowly, weakly, but clearly. "You're safe," the doctor said. "You're in the hospital." The billionaire blinked once. As the room settled, his eyes moved around slowly. He saw his sister crying quietly. He saw doctors, serious but hopeful. Then he saw someone small standing near the door. The boy. Their eyes met. The billionaire's heart rate jumped suddenly. Monitors reacted immediately. Doctors moved, thinking something was wrong. But the billionaire raised a shaking hand slightly. He wanted to point. He wanted to speak. The lead doctor noticed. "Do you recognize him?" he asked gently. A tear slid down the billionaire's face. The boy stepped forward slowly. "You're awake," he said softly. The billionaire's lips moved. It took great effort, but a whisper escaped. "Thank you." The room fell silent. No one spoke. No one moved. The words carried more weight than any medical result. The boy shook his head. "I didn't do anything," he said. "You chose to come back." The billionaire closed his eyes again, exhausted but peaceful. In that moment, everyone in the room understood something important. What had saved this man was not a machine or a medicine alone. It was a release, a letting go, a moment of truth that reached deeper than science. Doctors continued their work. Plans were made for recovery. Specialists discussed the next steps. But beneath all of it, one truth remained unspoken but clear. The unthinkable act was not a miracle performed by a child. It was a mirror held up to a powerful man, forcing him to face himself. And that, more than anything else, had brought him back from the edge. The days that followed felt unreal, as if the hospital itself was holding its breath. The billionaire's condition no longer worsened. That alone felt like a victory. Doctors monitored him constantly, moving carefully, afraid that one wrong step could undo everything. His recovery was slow, fragile, and uncertain, but it was happening. Every morning, nurses checked his vitals and whispered to each other in disbelief. His heart grew stronger day by day. His breathing improved. Machines that once did all the work were slowly adjusted, allowing his body to take over again. Each small improvement felt like a miracle, even though no one dared to call it that out loud. The billionaire drifted in and out of sleep, but when he was awake, he was different. His eyes no longer looked sharp or demanding. They looked searching, as if he was trying to understand something he had ignored his whole life. He spoke very little, saving his strength, but when he did, his words were careful and slow. One afternoon, he asked a question that surprised everyone. "Where's the boy?" The room went quiet. Doctors exchanged looks. His sister leaned closer. "The boy?" she asked gently. "The child," the billionaire whispered. "The one who spoke to me." The lead doctor nodded. "He's outside. We can bring him in if you want." The billionaire closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again. "Please." When the boy entered the room, he walked slowly, unsure if he truly belonged there. He still wore the same worn clothes. Nothing about him had changed, yet everything had. Doctors and nurses stepped aside, allowing him to approach the bed without question this time. The billionaire looked at him for a long moment. His eyes filled with emotion. "I remember your voice," he said weakly. "It pulled me back." The boy did not know how to respond. He stood quietly, hands clasped together. "I don't deserve what you did," the billionaire continued. "I have hurt many people." The boy shook his head. "I didn't come to judge you," he said. "I just came because I felt I should." The billionaire swallowed hard. Tears slipped down his face again. No one in the room had ever seen him cry before. Not family, not employees, not rivals. That moment changed how everyone saw him. As days passed, the billionaire's recovery became more visible. He began physical therapy, struggling to sit up, then to stand. Each step was painful and slow. He was frustrated at times, angry at his weakness. But unlike before, he did not shout. He did not blame others. He accepted help. During therapy sessions, he often asked for the boy to be nearby. The boy would sit quietly in a chair, saying nothing, just watching. His presence seemed to calm the billionaire. Doctors noticed that his vitals stayed more stable when the boy was in the room. The media soon caught on to the recovery. News headlines changed from fear to curiosity. How did the billionaire survive when doctors had given up hope? Some called it a medical mystery. Others called it a miracle. No one mentioned the boy. But inside the hospital, the story was already different. One evening, the billionaire asked his sister to bring a notebook. His hand was still weak, but he insisted. Slowly, painfully, he began to write. Names, places, events, people he had wronged, workers he had ignored, deals that destroyed lives. Each word cost him effort, but he kept going. "What are you doing?" his sister asked quietly. "Facing myself," he replied. That night, he could not sleep. Memories haunted him. He remembered factories he had shut down without warning, families left without income, communities broken. At the time, they had been numbers on a page. Now, they had faces. The boy sat near the window, watching the city lights. "Why are you doing this now?" he asked softly. The billionaire looked at him. "Because I almost died without understanding why I lived," he said. "You made me see that." Doctors noticed another change. The billionaire's emotional honesty seemed to strengthen him physically. His appetite returned. His sleep improved. His recovery accelerated. It was as if his body was responding to the release of a lifetime of hidden weight. One morning, the lead doctor gathered the staff. "This recovery is not just physical," he said. "It's emotional, and we must respect that." The billionaire began requesting visits, not from business partners, but from former employees. People were shocked. Some refused. Some came, unsure what to expect. When they entered the room, they did not find the cold, powerful man they remembered. They found someone humbled. He apologized, not with excuses, not with promises of money, with honesty. Some forgave him. Some did not. He accepted both. Each conversation seemed to make him stronger. The boy watched all of this quietly. He did not seek attention. He did not ask for anything. To him, this was not about reward. It was about truth. One day, the billionaire finally asked the boy a question he had avoided. "Why me?" he asked. "Why did you come to help me?" The boy thought for a long moment. "Because I know what it feels like to be invisible," he said. "And no one deserves to die feeling that way." The billionaire closed his eyes. The words cut deeper than any accusation ever had. As weeks passed, the billionaire was moved out of intensive care. He could walk short distances with support. His voice grew stronger. His eyes looked alive again, but different, softer. Doctors now spoke with confidence. "He will survive," they said. Outside, the world celebrated his recovery. Stock market stabilized. Headlines praised modern medicine. But inside the hospital, everyone knew the truth was more complex. This was not just a man recovering from illness. This was a man being reborn. And the poor boy who had crossed the hospital gates with nothing but belief was quietly standing at the center of it all, unaware that the hardest part of the story was still ahead. The billionaire's awakening brought with it a quiet storm. Outside the hospital, the world celebrated his survival. Business news praised the doctors, financial analysts reassured investors, and social media flooded with headlines about the untouchable man who had defied death. But inside the hospital, things were far from simple. The recovery was no longer only about medicine. It had become about truth, guilt, and the reality of a life lived in power but void of understanding. The billionaire began asking questions, hard questions about his past, the people he had ignored, and the choices he had made. He wanted to understand why he had lived so long blind to the suffering his decisions had caused. Doctors and family members tried to answer gently, but the answers never seemed enough. It wasn't just information he needed, it was realization. He needed perspective, a mirror that showed him the consequences of his life. That mirror came in the form of the boy. From the moment the child had entered the hospital, he had acted with nothing but honesty, courage, and an instinct that seemed beyond his years. The billionaire began to see something he had never understood before. The quiet strength of those society overlooked. The boy's presence was a challenge he could not ignore, a reflection of lives he had always considered insignificant. One afternoon, the billionaire asked the boy to sit closer. The boy hesitated for a moment, unsure if he was supposed to speak or just observe. Then, slowly, he walked to the bedside, hands folded, eyes calm. The billionaire studied him carefully. "You saved me," he said, voice rough from weakness. "But I don't know how to repay you." The boy shook his head. "You don't need to repay me," he said softly. "I didn't do anything. You just needed to remember something you had forgotten." "Remember?" the billionaire asked, confused. "You forgot that people are not numbers, that wealth is not life, and that real power is how you treat those who can't give you anything in return," the boy said. "You forgot that even a poor child can be stronger than the richest man if he has hope and courage." For the billionaire, the words hit harder than any business defeat ever had. He had always measured life in contracts, profits, and influence. He had never truly measured it in compassion or humanity. And now, facing death and staring at a child who had nothing, he understood the emptiness of his past. Over the next days, the billionaire insisted on meeting people he had wronged. Workers, former employees, even strangers whose lives he had disrupted with his decisions. Some met him with anger, some with suspicion, but all were surprised at his approach. He did not bring money as an apology. He did not offer contracts or favors. He offered honesty, listening, and regret. The billionaire's family watched these interactions with mixed feelings. They had always admired his business acumen, but now they saw him humbled in ways they never expected. Sometimes they felt proud, sometimes uneasy. No one had prepared for this change. Meanwhile, the boy observed silently. He said little, but the billionaire sought his approval in subtle ways. The child's quiet presence was a compass, guiding a man who had been lost in arrogance and wealth. The billionaire began asking small, personal questions. "Do you eat enough?" he asked one day. "Are you safe when you sleep?" The boy nodded carefully. The billionaire's voice cracked as he realized he had spent his life ignoring basic human struggles. At night, when the hospital lights dimmed and machines hummed softly, the billionaire reflected on his journey. He thought of the deals he had made, the people he had dismissed, and the lives he had overlooked. For the first time, he saw the pattern of loneliness that power had brought him. He realized that his survival was not a victory of money or medicine, but of compassion shown by a child society had deemed powerless. Then came a moment of revelation. The billionaire asked the boy about his life, about the streets he lived on, about the nights he spent alone. The boy spoke with honesty and simplicity, describing hunger, fear, and solitude, but also courage, hope, and resilience. The billionaire listened, absorbing every word. Each story cut deeper than he expected, stirring a mix of shame and admiration. He realized that this child had endured more than he ever had, and yet carried no hatred, no bitterness. "I have taken so much from the world," the billionaire said quietly, tears sliding down his face. "And yet here you are, giving me a chance I don't deserve." "You earned it by coming back," the boy replied simply. The billionaire understood then that his recovery was not a miracle in the medical sense. It was a miracle of recognition, of humility, and of human connection. A life spent in wealth and isolation had almost ended in despair, but the courage and compassion of one small, overlooked child had rewritten his fate. As the billionaire continued to recover physically, he also began to rebuild spiritually. He made plans to help those he had harmed, not with money alone, but with attention, respect, and meaningful action. He initiated programs for underprivileged children, offered employment opportunities with dignity, and started to listen to voices he had ignored for decades. Each action was deliberate, each decision a reminder of the boy's lessons. Word of his transformation began to spread, quietly at first, then more widely. People in his companies noticed a change in leadership. Workers reported better treatment and genuine concern. Communities previously affected by his decisions began receiving aid in thoughtful, personal ways. Slowly, he was no longer just a billionaire. He became a man of purpose. The boy, meanwhile, remained grounded. He did not seek recognition or reward. His role was complete in his eyes, yet the billionaire insisted on keeping him close. The child became his constant companion, a reminder of the life lessons no wealth could buy. One evening, as the sun set over the city skyline, the billionaire and the boy sat in silence by the hospital window. Machines hummed softly in the background, but the room was peaceful. The billionaire turned to the boy and said, "You changed my life. Not just my survival, but my understanding of what it means to live." The boy smiled faintly, shrugging. "I only reminded you," he said. "You were capable of seeing it yourself." The billionaire nodded, tears in his eyes. "I will never forget, and I will never live the same way again." For the first time, both felt the weight of a shared understanding. One had been saved physically, the other had saved his soul. The billionaire's journey of power and wealth had ended not in triumph or dominance, but in humility and transformation. And it was all because a child who had nothing had done the unthinkable. The hospital no longer felt like a place of despair for them. It had become a place of awakening, a place where the untouchable billionaire had finally touched what truly mattered: human connection, forgiveness, and the courage to change. And as they left the room together, side by side, everyone who witnessed it understood that the greatest lesson had not come from doctors, machines, or medicine. It had come from the one person the world had overlooked, the boy who had reminded a man with everything what it truly meant to live. The days that followed marked the beginning of a life the billionaire had never imagined. He was no longer just a man of wealth and influence. He had become a man of understanding, humility, and purpose. His survival had opened a window not only to his own soul, but to the lives he had overlooked for decades. And at the center of it all, quietly yet profoundly, was the boy who had done the unthinkable. The billionaire insisted on leaving the hospital. Doctors cautioned him that he was still weak, but he refused. "I need to see the world as it is," he said. "Not from behind walls, not from a tower of wealth, but as it truly exists." The boy accompanied him, walking beside him as they left the sterile, quiet halls that had been both a prison and a place of awakening. Outside, the streets were alive. Cars honked, people shouted, children played. The billionaire noticed everything: the small shops, the workers carrying heavy loads, the tired mothers, the old men waiting for buses. He had passed by these sights countless times before, but never truly seen them. Now, each detail cut through his mind with clarity, and with it, guilt and determination. He began meeting people he had ignored for years: workers who had been laid off, communities affected by his decisions, and even strangers who had suffered indirectly from the empire he had built. He did not approach them with money or promises. He approached them with questions, with honesty, with a willingness to listen. And slowly, he began to repair what he had broken, not just materially, but emotionally. The boy stayed close through it all. He did not speak much, but his presence was constant. The billionaire often looked to him for reassurance, for guidance in how to act with humility. The boy reminded him, silently, that power without empathy was empty, and wealth without humanity was meaningless. One evening, the billionaire visited a small community center in a poor neighborhood he had once dismissed. He had contributed to its destruction unknowingly through his business policies. He walked quietly, listening to the people he had affected. Children stared, unsure if he was another powerful figure passing by. But when he knelt to speak to them, apologized, and promised to help rebuild the center, the faces changed. Skepticism turned into cautious hope. The billionaire realized something remarkable. Change was possible, not just for him, but for everyone around him. He had spent decades trying to control life with contracts, businesses, and influence. Now, he saw that true impact came from compassion, attention, and action. Small gestures, like listening, acknowledging mistakes, and offering help without strings, carried more power than any financial transaction he had ever made. As months passed, the billionaire's life transformed completely. He launched initiatives to help underprivileged children, creating scholarships, mentorship programs, and safe spaces for education. He visited hospitals not as a patient, but as a benefactor who listened to both doctors and patients. He learned the names of those he helped, remembered their stories, and involved himself in ways that were personal, not just public relations. Through it all, the boy remained his silent guide. Together, they worked to ensure that the billionaire's second chance at life would honor the lessons he had been taught. The boy's presence reminded him of humility, perseverance, and the unseen strength of the world's forgotten. The billionaire also took time to reconcile with his family. Old resentments and conflicts were addressed, not with anger, but with dialogue. Apologies were spoken, and forgiveness was offered. For the first time, he understood that relationships were more important than wealth, and that healing others often meant first healing himself. One evening, as they watched the sunset from the top of a small hill overlooking the city, the billionaire turned to the boy. "I owe you my life," he said, voice heavy with emotion. "Not just for saving me, but for showing me who I am and who I could be." The boy shrugged as if it was nothing. "You did the work yourself," he said quietly. "I only reminded you what you forgot." The billionaire smiled through tears. He realized that the greatest lessons in life often came from those society overlooked. Strength, courage, and wisdom were not determined by money or status. They were defined by heart, empathy, and action. Word of his transformation spread, first quietly among those he directly helped, then more broadly. People noticed the billionaire's change not only in actions, but in demeanor. He was no longer distant or untouchable. He spoke with humility, listened with patience, and acted with integrity. His story became an inspiration, a reminder that no matter how far someone has fallen, or how blind they have been, change is always possible. The billionaire made one final decision that would honor the boy who had changed his life. He created a foundation in the boy's name. Its mission was simple yet profound, to provide hope, guidance, and opportunity for those society often ignored. The boy was invited to help lead it, not as a figurehead, but as a real voice for the people it served. Years later, when the billionaire looked back on his life, he understood that his wealth had never truly mattered. What mattered were the moments of connection, the acts of humility, and the courage to see beyond himself. And none of it would have been possible without the boy who had stepped forward when no one else could, whose unthinkable act reminded the world. And the billionaire. That life is measured not by what we take, but by what we give. The story ended not with the billionaire reclaiming his old life, but with him living a new one. One where every action carried meaning, every decision considered impact, and every moment held the potential for change. The boy remained by his side, a quiet hero, teaching him, guiding him, reminding him of the power of courage, empathy, and belief. In the end, the untouchable billionaire had been saved, not by doctors, not by machines, not by money, but by a child who saw humanity where others only saw numbers, who acted with heart where others relied on logic, and who reminded a man with everything that the greatest wealth in life comes from compassion, courage, and connection. The world had witnessed a miracle, but the true miracle was the transformation of a life, and the understanding that even the smallest, most overlooked voice can change destiny forever.